Hello and welcome. I'm Igor from Integra Audio, a channel focused on audio plugin reviews. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, please make sure to subscribe. Welcome back, guys. Today we're gonna talk about EQs and specifically the FabFilter Pro-Q3. This plugin has been very popular among audio engineers and no doubt it should be. So we are gonna take a look at it and talk about why is it one of the most popular EQ plugins on the market. The FabFilter Pro-Q3 is the latest Pro-Q plugin, the third generation of the Pro-Q family. The Pro-Q2 was very intuitive and popular also. Pro-Q3 shares its features with a lot of new and interesting stuff. Two biggest things added to the Pro-Q3 are external spectrum visualization and dynamic EQ modes. Some of you may be familiar with these features since we also saw it in iZotope's Neutron plugin, but for now we're gonna start off with default view of the plugin and slowly go over all of the things this plugin has to offer. As you can see, the plugin is very neatly designed and integrated into the DAW. And by that I mean it's not too intimidating for first-time users and it's very easy to experiment with a lot of features. One of the most loved things about this plugin is the resizability they have implemented here. The size can be changed by opening the drop-down menu and choosing a size. As we can see, the smallest window is the mini one and the biggest one is extra large. It also has full screen mode for surgical EQing or observing the frequency spectrum. And for VST3 versions of this plugin, you can drag and resize the window by will by dragging from the corner. AAU versions need to use the drop-down menu, however. So now, let's see how to actually use it. For starters, we should add a node and for that in action we just need to click and drag from this point like so. And you can also double click on specific frequency to add them like this. Double click adding is very useful for when you're observing the frequency. You can precisely double click on it to add a node and then go from there. So let's see that in action. I've got here some multitracks from Cambridge Music Technology website. You can download them from the link below. As we can see, the spectrum looks beautiful and pleasing. But for now let's add a node with double click. And let's say we need to boost or cut here, so let's add it. So double click and here it is. You can use Control on Windows or Command if you're a Mac user and adjust the Q. And by single clicking on this line, as you can see nothing will happen, but when dragged it will add the boost or cut. Very useful integration of commands. Also you can quickly select all of the nodes and delete them by pressing the X on the heads-up display. Or just going back to the default preset. Now, one also very interesting thing about this plugin is that it automatically sets some stuff up for you when setting the node. While boosting, cutting and when you're mixing or EQing, the FabFilter Pro-Q3 recognizes the possible use case. As you can see, when adding a node to different areas in the mix, the Pro-Q3 changes the filter shape. It very much improves workflow. So when working from around 60 Hz to around, let's say, 10k Hz, you're probably going to boost or cut some frequencies. So it will automatically use the bell shape. And when below 60 Hz or above 10k, you're probably going to do some high passing and low passing. So look, as we add a note here, it automatically uses the low shelf or high shelf, which is very neat. Most of the time, it's gonna be the shape you intended. So when boosting, cutting, clearing mud, adding sparkle, You will always have the right tool, and with quick Q control you can go surgical really fast with great results. Now, as you probably noticed, when you add a node in the FabFilter Pro-Q, a heads-up display pops up, and not just one, but two. One smaller and one bigger. The reason they did this is because the controls aren't always visible, and that way it doesn't clutter the view of the spectrum. Only when you want to adjust things, it pops up. And so it has the mini one and the big one. The small one is always present when you hover over the node. And the bigger one doesn't interrupt your view then. You can click away and get rid of it when you're done setting your nodes. And from there you can just adjust them with the small one. Also very neat. From the small HUD, you can actually also A/B check the EQ correction you made. So let's check that real quick. This is a very nice way to quickly A/B the correction. From here, you can also change the shape. As you can see, you have bells, shelves, high cuts, low cuts, notches, and a couple of new ones over here. Also, it's displaying information about frequency, so as you slide it around, you can see easily. And it tells you, of course, the dB if you move it up or down. Here we have a solo button, which is used to solo the selected node and hear what you're boosting or cutting. And you can also drag while clicking on the solo icon to find some troubled frequencies. Now, if we take a look at the bigger menu, we have a little bit more controls on the surface of it, but it really has a lot to offer. You can turn nodes on and off here. Also, change the band shape as in the small one. And adjust frequencies instead of dragging it around. It works very smoothly. You can bring the gain up or down, and this knob is for fine-tuning the Q. And here you can change which node you're controlling from this menu, if you have more nodes. So let's add some to show you what I mean. As you can see, the menu stays in place, but you can still switch between the nodes and control them from one spot. The HUD is also color-coded like the nodes, so you always know which one is selected. One beautiful thing about this plugin is that it's capable of channel-specific EQing. This means that you can choose to put a node which will only affect the chosen channel, left channel, right channel, mid channel, side channel, or stereo, as usual. With these options you can even go deeper into your EQing. For example, you can keep the low end in control on, let's say, stereo synths and just high pass the side channel from around 200 Hz. A lot of people love this feature, and specifically this plugin because of it, and I think it is a really nice addition to the plugin. Now, let's talk about the rest of the GUI and the controls we see here. First off, let's talk about this piano icon right here. When you click it, it brings up the piano roll, which shows you where the notes are in the comparison to the drum frequencies on the screen. This is very nice if you want to do some harmonic EQing, or if you want to bring out a specific key out of a sound used in the song. And of course, as you can see, the color-coded nodes also correspond to the piano roll on the bottom. When using the piano roll to position the nodes, they automatically lock on the notes in the piano roll. Now, the next thing in here is the MIDI learn. This is useful if you want to physically control the plugin using faders and knobs. You can really map it to any node or control you like. Best scenario for this use case is usually of some kind of live performance, or even if you have something like a mixing control surface with specific EQ controls. I don't find myself using MIDI to control the plugin, but if you're into that stuff, you can definitely do it. Next up, we have a button here for processing modes, which we use to choose between zero latency, natural phase, or linear phase processing. I usually leave it on default, but if you know what you're doing with it, you can use it for your specific use case. In zero latency mode, Pro-Q matches the magnitude response of analog EQing as close as possible with zero latency. Natural phase also matches the magnitude response of analog EQing, and it closely matches analog phase response. It delivers the most accurate frequency response and the best sound quality. Linear phase processing leaves the phase of the original signal intact and only changes the magnitude. This can be very useful when EQing different sounds with correlating phase characteristics. But due to the nature of linear phase processing, latency and possible pre-ringing are introduced. You can check for more details in the FabFilter website. They have made videos about this topic. Next up, we can see we have this analyzer menu, and here comes the really cool stuff. Here you can check for a pre-EQing and post-EQing, so really you can see and hear what you did to the signal. As you can see, you can really go deep with checking all the Pro-Q instances from here, pre and post. Now, let's demonstrate the analyzer pre-post option. So here, you can see pre is a little bit gray, and when we turn on post, we get this outline here. This white outline represents the changes we made. So when we add a node and cut maybe here and the boost here, you can really see the difference being visually represented on the analyzer. Very, very cool. With the analyzer, you can actually cross-check between the frequency relations if you have loaded a Pro-Q instance somewhere else in the mix. And as you can see, it's color-coded. Also, you can use this crosstalk between plugins to sidechain something. Down here in the buttons row, we have a really nice little thing called masking check. Masking is a phenomenon which happens when you have two instruments colliding with each other frequency-wise. And let's say you have a synth and a guitar, and they play the same frequency, which is, let's say, around 750 Hz. In that case, one of the instruments will dominate in that range and the other one would be less audible. So, FabFilter added a really nifty thing to let you cross-check for those between instruments when using the overlay function from above. The masking is gonna be showed in red color where some masking could be occurring. This can be very handy. So when you see where masking is happening, you can choose which instrument is more important in the context of the song and then EQ out the masking with EQing the other instrument which is causing it in the first place. Now, let's take a look at the interesting feature down here called Spectrum Grab. When you enable Spectrum Grab, it lets you kind of freeze the spectrum, so as you can see, when you hover your mouse over the spectrum, it will turn purple. And when you keep your mouse on it, it will grab the spectrum, so you can potentially see some areas that need to be fixed or if you have some loud peaks. So let's kind of see it in action. I'm gonna play the song, and we'll see how it does. And if you want to lock it in place, instead of just hovering over and keeping the mouse still, you also need to click and hold when it's doing its thing. It will lock itself and also it will turn blue. So let's check that feature. Now as you can see, it showed us the purple, and now all we need to do is click and hold to lock it. And when it's locked in place, you can actually drag these nodes and adjust the sonics from there. Next up, we have this little snowflake icon. It's a freeze option similar to the Spectrum Grab, but with this one you can freeze the spectrum and let it kind of build the frequencies that you might want to put in context with other stuff. It slows down and you can really have some sense of what's going on in the mix. Next up we have here, this is the little global bypass button, which is only that, global bypass button. So let's choose some kind of a preset and do a before and after. Next up, we have this pop-up menu with controls for phase inversion, auto gain and output meters. Auto gain is especially cool here because if turned on, Pro-Q3 will try to compensate for the gain when EQing. It's a very nice thing because sometimes you really need that reality check if something sounds nice only because it's louder or quieter. It compensates and puts your EQing into context loudness-wise. And here next to it, we have the output meter switch. It lets you show or hide the output meter depending on your liking. Up here, we have two knobs actually. One is for output gain and the other one is for panning, as you can see here. Now the next thing we're gonna talk about is the dynamic EQing options in the Pro-Q. So what's dynamic EQing? When you add a dynamic node to the spectrum, it basically becomes a kind of a multiband compressor, which either expands and boosts the signal to a set amount or area, or it can cut and compress or attenuate the signal to a set amount and area. So let's take a look at how it works. We're gonna play some audio and mess around with the options. Let's say you want to add a dynamic node. You just need to put a regular one, adjust your regular stuff like Q and gain, and now you can use the other dial on the gain knob in the big menu here to make the node dynamic and set the dynamic range. While adjusting the dynamic node, you also have threshold options, which you can see here. With it, you can obviously adjust the threshold of the node. And the last but not least, you have the presets here, which are very useful. You also have dynamic presets for you to start experimenting with the plugin. It has dynamic presets for drums, EDM, instruments, mixes, and even vocals. A lot of these presets can really help you if you know how to use them. Usually you should use them as a starting point if you find it helpful in your situation. They are a great tool to help you understand the plugin better. So let's recap here. The Pro-Q3 is a very useful plugin. It packs a lot of features and it looks beautiful. It's very easy to use, and to be honest, I use it a lot in my sessions. All in all, I would recommend this plugin to anyone who is looking for EQ plugins right now. Please tell me what do you think about it. Do you own it, and if yes, how do you like it? Leave your comments down below. Thank you for watching, guys. If you stayed till the end, please make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you get notified when we post a video. This has been Igor, and I'll see you in another one. Peace out.